of Peterborough's Library's Internet Security class. If you've been to the class before in previous years, we do this once or twice a year, primarily because it's one of the larger classes and it's also, in my opinion, one of the more useful classes, especially with updated information. So if Mary has your email, as she was just saying, she will send you the link to the slides and the link to the actual recording of the class once this is done. If you have the slides, you can look at it a year from now and they'll be updated. So it's just one link for this particular class that I'll keep updated going forward. So if you're wondering if it'll be useful in 6 months, just click on it and you'll see updated information if there are any new things that came out. So this class has a rather loose agenda, but definitely if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat, or at certain points we'll stop and ask people to unmute and ask any questions they have. But the basic agenda will go introduction, things you definitely must do, things you should do, things that are nice to do, and then we'll definitely stop at the end for questions. This is one of the longer classes we do, so feel free to buckle in. So I've gone over this previously. This is an example of a company that had an issue with cybersecurity and a cyber threat. And one of the reasons why, if you notice the date, it's 2017, why I don't have a more recent example is this company did a really thorough audit of how this happened and kind of where the vulnerabilities were. So if you want to actually look into this some more, feel free to Google it. I'm not going to go over it in great detail, but basically there was a virus and they had 600 IT staff and it took 45 seconds to bring down a bank and they lost 10 billion total, or different companies lost 10 billion. So this is to say that even huge companies are at risk, but there are a lot of things you can do that will solve and fix the problem. And at the bottom, you can see that the issue, one of the bullet points was the Ukrainian version of Quicken was installed at one computer and that computer was not updated it didn't have its security updated. So $10 billion, please update your computer, and we'll definitely go over that later on how you can do that. This is the distribution in 2020 as of Q3, I think, for kind of what different types of viruses there are, or what different types of malware there are. On the left-hand side, there's a bar chart. The largest group is Trojans at 64.3%, then viruses, then worms, then backdoors, then yada, yada, yada. And we'll go over that in a little bit, what kind of separates them from each other. On the right-hand side, you can see for the last 10 years, the total amount of malware out there. And I think this is important just so you can see that it is going up. Every year there's going to be more and more threats out there. And the graph on the left is from the website. It's linked right below. And then the graph on the right is from AV Test, which is a pretty good website to check out if you're asking yourself the question, which antivirus product should I get? And we'll also go over that in a little bit. Behavior vulnerabilities. So these are kind of things that you as a person have control over. So some examples are forgetting to log off. In this example, you could be at a coffee shop, go up to grab your order, sit back down. That only took a minute, but someone could have sat down, installed something on your computer, or just looked over your screen. Or you just left for a while at work. Someone else who's walking by can randomly just go up to your computer and do stuff. So just log off. Whenever you log off on a Mac or a Windows computer, as long as you have a password associated with the account, it will lock the computer, which means that someone can't randomly go up and do whatever they want. Second thing of behavior is poor password management. If you are the type of person who has a sticky note to on your monitor that says your username and password, uh, that would be poor password management. I've also seen people put sticky notes under their keyboard. I've seen them have it on a pad of paper just on the desk. I've seen it in the top drawer. Kind of poor password management is both having a really easy to guess password, and if it's a harder to guess password, if you just write it down where someone can see it. That's poor password management. Another example of behavior is failure to create backups. This isn't necessarily to do with you getting a piece of malware on your computer, but this is more for just general security. If your computer dies today, how much of your data will you have lost? And that's one of the reasons why you should have backups. And we'll kind of go over two different terminologies for backup plans. Fourth point is if you do not check and apply system and firmware updates. These are incredibly easy to do. In fact, a lot of complaints I have, not a lot, but some complaints I have where I work, is that Windows keeps asking them to update their computer and restart because some updates, once they're done, the computer needs to restart for them to take effect. And I get complaints that Windows is asking them all the time to restart and update their computer. So this isn't something that really goes under the radar. Computers will really notify you and say, hey, please install updates. So there really isn't an excuse not to. If it's been a couple days and you keep hitting ignore, that's a problem. You just want to hit accept, restart the computer. With solid state drives, it takes like 30 seconds now, and you'll be fine. And the other example of behavior is failing to consult support for help. So sometimes someone will tell me about an issue and they'll say, yeah, this happened. It started happening about a week, 2 weeks ago, but I thought it was nothing. So you should just ask me. Like if you have a problem, if you're working somewhere and you have an IT department and you have an issue, just ask them. It's a lot easier to look at an issue before it becomes an issue. The other thing some people do is they're embarrassed if someone clicks on a link and then in hindsight, 30 seconds later, they realize, oh, I should not have clicked on that. It's people won't say anything and won't ask for help because it's kind of embarrassing how it happened. Kind of like if you accidentally walk into a lamp post, just walking on the street, you may make up a different story as to why your head has a little bump on it. So just ask. IT people are like doctors. We've heard it far worse, and we won't remember any embarrassing things about it.
And don't forget, there's tech drop-in on Wednesdays. That's a great time to ask Tim for all of this help.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't want to plug that too hard, so
Oh,
I let
that's
Mary
what
do
I'm
that.
here for. Yeah.
Exactly. More examples of behavior. Now, I will say normally when we do this class, the last couple times it's been in person, and it's kind of more of a give and take. So if someone's nodding off, I can't see you and ask you a specific question. So definitely, if you want to chime in or have a specific thing you're wondering, is this an example of behavior? Feel free to put it in the chat and we can go over it. Another example of behavior is mistyping URLs. So this isn't as much an issue anymore, but it's one of my favorite ones, so it's still on here. In the early days of Amazon, um, entrepreneurial people would take common misspellings of Amazon and buy the website for it and then make it look like Amazon. So people would log in, would get connected to the fake website because they spelled Amazon wrong, and they would log in, they would try and check out because they made it look the exact same. They would check out, give their credit card information, and then poof, money's gone. So make sure that if you go to a URL, just double check that it's the correct one. Next one is plugging USB media from unknown sources into a computer. This is generally not going to affect normal people, but it's one of my favorite things because if you're familiar with government installations, they have a certain level of security they need to have. And one of the way they do that is they have an air-gapped network. What an air-gapped network is that you have a network. So imagine you're sitting at a desk and you have two computers. The computer on the left has internet. The computer on the right does not have internet. So basically, air gapped, the computer on the left will not be able to talk to the computer on the right. So they're two separate networks. So one of the ways hackers or other governments will get into the network that is not connected to the internet is they will have a USB stick. They'll just put it on the ground. Someone will pick up the USB stick, walk into the building, plug it into a computer just to see what's on it. And there are some kind of funny cases of that being the cause of all sorts of issues. So we have a question of, do fake sites still lead with HTTPS? Yeah. The only requirement to get HTTPS is to buy the certificate that says it's a real site and it's secure. But the thing is, if you own the site, you can still see the information. So fake sites can still have the HTTPS. The last example of behavior I have written down is clicking on suspect or unknown links and attachments. So we have a pretty good, well, don't want to pat myself on the back, but there's a pretty good slide coming up with some examples of what people tend to click on that we'll go over. But essentially what this means is if you get an email and it has a link in it and you click on that link, well, hopefully that link is directing you to the right place. We'll go over how to check to make sure a link is actually going to where you think it's going in a little bit. Phishing and spear phishing. So kind of this is what you hear of or what you should think of whenever you think of hacking or like a social type of hacking. And what this is basically sending out a lot of emails or specific emails to get someone to click on something. So phishing is a really wide net approach, and spear phishing is a very direct and targeted approach. So you can think of phishing as someone will send out an email for some sort of male dysfunction and send it to 10 million people. And if they get 100 people to click on it, they've succeeded. And good job, spammers. So that's phishing. Spear phishing is way more direct. So if someone was trying to spearfish, why do I use myself as an example? If they were trying to spearfish me, they would try and find out where I worked. They would then find out what department I was in. They would then try and find out what my direct email address was. They would try and find out XYZ and kind of tailor an email specifically for me or for my department or for my company. And then when they send it out, it'll look far more legit than a traditional phishing attempt. We have a question of, when you unsubscribe, do you in fact confirm your email address? So that's a good question. When you unsubscribe to an email, one of the things that that does is it sends a notification that this person at this email address hit unsubscribe. So it confirms that it's an active account. Yes. So one of the more popular and more effective ways to do phishing, a phishing attack, is through social media. On this page, in this image, we have kind of either the percentage of the phishing attempts that people will click on for the different services. And also in LinkedIn's case, because it's vastly the largest, they have some specific examples of what the subject line is. So apparently, if you get a lot of people, if you get a LinkedIn email and it says you appeared in new searches this week, people are looking at your LinkedIn profile, please add me to your LinkedIn network or join my network on LinkedIn, people will open the email and click on it. So just know, don't do that. But it's kind of a give and take because how much time do you really want to spend researching every single email from if you use LinkedIn? Every single email is legit. Um, the good news is a lot of email companies or email services like Google have pretty substantial detection in terms of not even letting the fake emails get to you, but you still need to be cautious whenever you click on a link. So for Twitter, someone has sent you a direct message. A lot of people, if they get that, they click on it. Tagged photo on Facebook for Facebook. New voice message for iMessage. I'm not really sure why login alert for Chrome for Motorola X is such a large demographic. Someone may have accessed your account, and for the first time this year, WhatsApp has gotten involved. So, yeah,
So Tim, those are actual topics, right? You just don't know whether they're coming from the actual um, from LinkedIn or whether they're coming from a Fisher.
yeah, and
Okay.
that's kind of the problem because if you get an email that looks like it's from LinkedIn, like it has the
Mhm.
correct header, and it says people are looking at your LinkedIn profile, and you open it, and it kind of looks like a legit LinkedIn message, you're pretty likely, if you use LinkedIn a lot, to just click on the link if you want to see who is looking at your profile. Ideally, you would hover over the link first and then look and make sure that it's going to LinkedIn. Or just realize that you had a subject line email that said people are looking at your LinkedIn profile. You can just go directly to your LinkedIn profile and check it out and kind of
Okay.
bypass the whole clicking on something
All
in
right.
an email format.
Thanks for explaining.
Here are for 2020, the top general email subjects that people will click on. Apparently, payroll deduction forms really high up there. But then we have kind of, if you read through this, I know that would get me, some of them, for clicking. If I got an email that I thought was from my work before Christmas and it said vacation policy update, I may be tempted to click on that. Uh, COVID-19 announcement, emergency leave pay policy, that would get a lot of people. So this is kind of showing you how really generic email subjects that may seem innocuous are very easy for spammers to kind of figure out. Like obviously COVID-19 is in what, four of these? Yeah, four of these, or five of these if you include official quarantine notice. So they move with the times, they're very topical. So you always have to make sure that you're checking to make sure you're not clicking on something bad. So here we have different malware types. Viruses, scareware. I don't think anyone really uses that anymore, but it's still a technical definition. Ransomware, spyware, adware, worm, and Trojans. On the following pages, I have clinical definitions for each one of these. We're not going to go over that because that will put people to sleep. But if you have a specific question about one of these, feel free to ask. And if you want to read the like a definition of what they are, they're in the slides for you to peruse at your leisure afterwards. So worm, virus, Trojan, adware, spyware, spam, and ransomware. So we will go over ransomware a little bit. mainly because it's still kind of sexy. It's the new kid on the block. And what ransomware is kind of different than everything else, more so than a virus differs from a Trojan. So what ransomware does is it will get on your computer, generally through an email attachment or a Trojan, if you want to think of it that way, just like in the Odyssey. And it will encrypt your computer, make it so you can't access your computer, and then ask you to pay money to get access to your data again. You may have seen a lot of headlines with these in the news where hospitals or towns in Florida will get hit with ransomware, and kind of their whole operation gets shut down. Now, the next question is, since someone has control over your computer or computers, you can't access it, and they're asking you for money, is should you pay it? And my answer to that kind of depends on how important your data is to you. If you have a good backup solution, like we briefly discussed, then you don't really need to pay it because you can just wipe your entire computer, reinstall everything, and bring the data back. But if you have, 20 years of photos on that computer and there is nowhere else in the world those photos are, then sometimes it's worth paying them. Because one thing about this business model is the vast majority of them do give you your computer back. Because if you think about it, if someone gets hit with a ransomware attack and news outlets start getting reports of people who paid and didn't get their information back, who didn't get their data back, then other people wouldn't pay. So some of the more fancy ransomware actually will give you a help desk line to call for someone to walk you through how to make a payment, which I thought is very nice. So just again, if you get hit with ransomware, if you do not have a backup and you really need this stuff on your computer, then you can pay if you want. But I would not recommend paying and then using the computer. You can potentially pay the money, get the data back, and then refresh the computer. So basically, take the data and then blow the computer away because you're not sure if they added something to the computer so they can get back in again, or you just don't know what they've done with it.
Tim, can you talk a little bit about encrypting? Because personally, as a private person, you can also encrypt some of the things that you send, correct?
Yeah. So encryption is a kind of a public-private key thing where you need, in order to access something, you need a predetermined password. And if you don't have the password, you don't have access to it. So what ransomware is doing is it is encrypting all of your information and not giving you the password. You can also encrypt your data, but ransomware can encrypt your encrypted data, if that makes sense. Um,
Wondering if you wanted it to be something secure. I believe my children did the encryption on the WhatsApp things, so it says it's encrypted end to end. Not that I know how to do this.
yep.
So that would ensure that someone else can't tap into it, correct?
Generally, yes. So the vast majority of time, if something is end-to-end encrypted, no
Right.
one can see what the message is. And that's one of the reasons why a lot of people like the Apple Messages app, because it was one of the first to get end-to-end, true end-to-end encryption.
And basically, you just require a password to access it.
Yeah, so a password is required to access it, but in the example of kind of messaging applications, the password is already shared because of that two key encryption method. So
Oh,
the person who sent it and the person who received it can both read it, but other people cannot.
And you have to specify end-to-end encryption.
So end-to-end encryption just means the entire, you can think of it as a tunnel. So while a car is driving in the tunnel, no one can see it from above. So the entire length of that tunnel is encrypted. If it's not end-to-end encrypted, then it's basically not encrypted because while it's driving in that tunnel, there are a lot of windows and everyone can look at it.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, and the people who are ransoming and encrypting don't care if they can see the stuff, it's only that you want it back. That is correct. So don't click on links, don't get ransomware. I will say it has dropped off a little bit the past year. A lot more antiviruses are getting really good at not letting it happen, which is good. I thought WhatsApp came encrypted. WhatsApp is encrypted. Yep, they have encrypted between WhatsApp participants. The messaging between WhatsApp participants is encrypted. The the negative thing with WhatsApp is it has servers in China, and unless that's changed, and any company that has a server in China needs to, the Chinese Communist Party requires any servers in China to be able to be read by the Chinese Communist Party. So if something is end-to-end encrypted, but it has a server in China, an argument can be made that it potentially isn't properly encrypted because generally the rule is that the Chinese government needs the ability to read the message.
So Tim,
So,
adding Chinese to my computer doesn't make me more vulnerable, does it?
nope, nope, that's just a language pack.
Okay.
Rootkit, again, I'm not going to cover that, but there's the definition to the right. I will say rootkit is the one thing you don't want because it's the most difficult to get rid of, but antiviruses are generally pretty good. Section 1, must do. So we're going to quickly go over things that kind of immediately, if you haven't done this, you really, really should. Software firmware updates. This is the most important thing you can do, especially for things like your antivirus. If you get an antivirus program and you never update it, it's essentially useless because new things come out every week and the antivirus program will constantly update itself. And for example, WannaCry ransomware hit more than 300,000 users in 150 countries. The vulnerability it exploited was patched 2 months prior to it being released by Microsoft. So anyone who was affected by WannaCry did not update their computer. And if they had updated their computer, they would have been fine. This is why you allow Windows, Apple, and other updates to be performed. So antivirus and anti-malware software. You need at least one of these. And there's a slight difference between antivirus and anti-malware, but they are moving towards meaning the exact same thing. Technically, an antivirus is going to stop something from getting on your computer, but if it's on the computer, it'll take care of it. Anti-malware software is something is on the computer, it will take care of it. So antivirus tries to block it from ever getting to the computer and then try and take care of it. And anti-malware is just there to clean up whatever's on your computer. My favorite anti-malware software is Malwarebytes. And both of these are part of a defense, and you're not going to be 100% safe with either of these or both of these. And then avcomparatives.org, it provides independent testing of AV solutions. So essentially what they do is they will have, 10 or 100 or whatever computers with the different anti-malware and antivirus software on them. They'll just pump them full of spam, of viruses, of malware, and see how many each of the software catches. And then they'll publish a report. So you can kind of see, which one caught the most, which is good. Password management. So there are 3 different YouTube links. Feel free to click on these after. But basically, it's the Jimmy Kimmel show, where he just straight up, someone with a camera asks people for their password, and they tell them. And that's an example of bad password security. So before we kind of move on to password management, does anyone have any questions about antivirus and anti-malware software? Because this is a pretty big, pretty broad topic.
Yes, hi, Tim. I have a question. Is it okay to just use the free version of the antivirus? Or is it better to get the one that you pay for?
Um, it really depends on which antivirus you're using. So I'll tell about my experience. So one of the things I try not to do is explicitly tell people what they should or shouldn't do, um, because I'm afraid legally. Not really, but I like to say I am. So I like to put it in terms of what do I do, mainly so anyone out there can know exactly how to break into my computer. So I have Malwarebytes free on my computer, and I have the built-in Windows Defender on my computer. And I have been using Windows for my antivirus ever since they first released Microsoft Security Essentials back in 2009, I want to say. And it's always done me well. So free does not mean bad in this case. Now, if you are looking at protecting multiple computers in your home and you want something that makes sure all of them are up to date, some of the benefits of a paid plan like WebRoot is that you can see which computers are up to date, like in an app or on your phone. You can just check like, oh, did the computer in the living room get all the updates? And you don't have to actually go over to the computer and manually check. You can just look in the app and it'll say up to date. So there are some reasons to pay for it. And also, I'm not here saying that Microsoft's version is the best. It is markedly middle of the pack. But in the middle of the pack, we're talking, the best possible antivirus is like 96% accurate. Microsoft's at like 93, and then all the ones below it go down to like 89% accurate. Like it's a very kind of a small window between all of the different antivirus solutions.
So there's a question about Apple version. Does web, and I have a question too, if you have a house with multiple PCs and Apples, would web roots cover the different platforms?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like WebRoot has both. I know Sophos does both. I mean, most of them do both.
Okay.
And actually, I don't have it up. I didn't include this slide, but the jump for the number of Mac viruses, not to startle anyone, from like 2019 to 2020, I think went up by 500%.
Wow.
So I don't know if it's a market share thing. I don't know
Mhm.
why, but there were 500% more Apple specific viruses running around this year than last year. If you're running Linux, are you safer? Um, yeah. I mean, like Linux is a huge mixed bag, right? So Linux is as secure as you want it to be, is the thing with Linux. However, because of the market share, uh, not a lot of people are trying to generically break into a Linux computer. So you can kind of think of it like this. If you have a pool, if you have 100 people in a room, and I think statistically, what, two of them would be using Linux and 10 of them would be using Mac, that's a pretty small group of people out of 100. I'd rather just go after the other, 80, 88 people because it's just a lot easier to get, a couple out of the 88 where you have to work for the 10 or the two people, um, which is kind of the safety through obscurity model Apple and Linux have been able to take advantage of. But yes, Linux, if as long as you're up to date with Linux, and you have it properly bolted down, Linux would be safer regardless of if someone was trying to write a virus for Windows or for Mac or for Linux. Linux has the most distributions, it has the most lockdown features. You can really make it really secure depending on which distro you're using. So that's a really long-winded way of saying Linux is safer, I guess.
Okay, thank you.
All right, password management. Um, Mary likes this part so much. We uh, we do a separate class just on password management.
Yes.
So um, if you ask Mary politely, she would be more than happy to send you a copy uh, of the presentation and of the slides from our latest password management class. So we're not going to go over it in as great detail because then why would we have the other class? Um, but we do have some kind of short tidbits of information. Oops of password management. So this is kind of like the bad things about passwords. If you use a short password, it's easier to guess, including brute force. If you store it improperly, like writing it down where someone can see it, that's bad. If you never change it, that's bad. If you make it really easy to guess, that's bad. Using the same password, that's bad. Using words, that's bad. Yeah, everything's bad. So I'll go over one of these in kind of more detail as to what I mean. Using the same password. What do we mean by that? Well, what we mean by that is I have a Target account, I have a Walmart account, I have a Macy's account, I have a Google account, and I just don't want to remember a password, right? A password for each of them, like a different password. That's really annoying. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a strong password. So a legitimately strong password, and then I'm just going to use it for multiple things. Well, the problem with that is if that password happened to be for Target in 2019, congratulations, whenever the Target breach happened, people got access to your password. Not only did they get access to your password, they also got access to the email account associated with that password. And then what they're able to do is take that email account and that password and just plug it in to every site they can think of. And because you used the same password, they are now able to access all of your different websites. And it becomes scary whenever you use the same password for like a banking website or for Amazon, because you probably stored your credit card information on Amazon so they can just order stuff. And if you don't catch it in time, they get, that new $6,000 TV that I don't think anyone needs, but I'm certain people want it. So that's just one example of why you shouldn't use the same password.
It's a good one.
And one of the things is a password manager will help with that. So in order to be safe, you kind of need to think about these things. Short passwords are easier to crack. I mean, you can kind of think of it as if you've ever had a keypad in front of a building. Imagine if that password, if you only needed to press 2 keys to get into the building, that's a lot easier to guess than 4 keys. Um, you definitely want to use unique passwords for the reasons why we just went over. And if you are unaware if your passwords have been found in a breach, you can use haveibeenpwned.com, have I been pwned, and you can basically type in the username and it'll search its database for any examples of that username being in a breach. However, a lot of credit card companies do this automatically now, which I think is kind of cool, but also kind of scary because now credit card companies are tracking if I've been involved in a data breach.
Mm.
So, strong password. There's a website called howsecureismypassword.net. We can go over to there if anyone wants kind of this with more examples. But a password that is difficult to detect by both humans and computer programs, effectively protecting data from unauthorized access. That's what you want your password to be. And if you look below, so I have 6 letters and then 308 million. Basically, if your password only contains 6 letters, there are 308 or roughly 309 million different combinations in the English alphabet. Now, an easy way, so a computer would just have to guess 309 million times, which is like 2 minutes, right? Because computers can do a lot of calculations a second. Now, if all you do is you add 2 letters, and we're just talking about lowercase letters here, so 26. If you just add 2 letters, now you're at 208 billion. Now, if you have 8 letters and you also include some uppercase letters, now you're at 53.5 trillion. Now, if you have 8 letters with characters like an exclamation point, now we're getting somewhere where I don't even want to read that number. So basically, just adding just 2 letters to a password or 2 symbols to a password really will make it more difficult. One of the things that irritates me is early on in security, there was a password limit of 15 characters, and some companies and some websites haven't updated. So if you have a password that is over 15 characters, you can't use it for some applications and some websites. But once you get up into the 12 character range, you're pretty darn safe in terms of someone guessing it. This is a comic by XKCD, and it's kind of going through one method of making a secure password that you can actually remember. In the example, it's Troubadour with zeros, numbers, and a punctuation mark. And this one would take roughly 3 days, and it's pretty easy for a computer to guess it. But it's really hard for you to remember because, why did you use a 0 for the first O, but an O for the second O? You may get those mixed up. Whereas if you just went with 4 random words, correct horse battery staple, it would take 550 years to guess it for a computer. And it's pretty easy to remember. And as the thing says, you've probably already memorized it. So this is an example of one method you can do to make a password that you can remember on your own. Is it the best way? No. It should be truly random, but you can actually remember correct horse battery staple versus Troubadour and 3. And more on that point, the only secure password is the one you can't remember. Password management, the manual approach. So this is another way of kind of thinking of a password, is you take a sentence and turn it into a password. The example is this little piggy went to market, and you basically just TLP went to M, and that doesn't use dictionary words really, except for went. But it would probably be easy for you to remember it. The other one I've heard of that I kind of think is nifty is the Star Spangled Banner is an example. So, oh, say, can you see? You basically take the first letter, including punctuation and capitalization, of a refrain of that song, and that's your password. You're going to remember it. It'll kind of make you feel kind of silly reciting it in your head to type your password out, but it's not something you would easily forget. The ideal scenario is use a password manager. So we will go over password managers a little bit later, so I'm not going to stop for questions on that just yet. I'm also trying to blaze through this before an hour is done, so people can ask questions or won't feel like they've wasted an hour and a half, just the normal hour.
Thank you, Tim.
Good. I was glad you kind of gave a little chuckle to that. All right. So implement a backup strategy. So yes, we have moved on from password management and antivirus stuff and are now talking about how to back up your computer. There are two rules. They're both relatively simple. The 3-2-1 rule, you want 3 copies of your data in 2 different places, and one of those places shouldn't be in your home. So in this scenario, in a scenario where your home burns down, hopefully that doesn't happen, you still have the off-site backup. So you can still have your data. Oftentimes people will use the offsite backup location as just cloud storage, which makes a lot of sense. And then the other one is locks, and that's lots of copies keeps stuff safe. One of the reasons I don't like locks as much as 3-2-1 is sometimes people get the wrong idea and just start keeping backups everywhere, which leads to like version control. Because if you update something, like a document, you don't want to have to update it in the 7 different locations, right? Because now you're going to have documents that, were last updated in 2015, 2016, 2019, 2020, and it's going to be difficult to kind of figure out which one is the newest. All right, so the 3-2-1 rule, how would I do this? 3 copies, 2 different places, and 1 offsite. So I will have a copy of it on my computer. I will have a copy of it on my external hard drive that is plugged into my computer, and I will have a copy of it in the cloud using Google Backup and Sync. 3 copies, 2 different places, 1 offsite. It's fairly straightforward. And definitely if you have any questions about backups, we'll cover that at the end, because it's a very broad topic. We've talked a lot about how people can get into or send you emails that want you to click on stuff. Let's take a quick second to talk about browsers. So a browser is what you use to get and access the internet. So a lot of you may be familiar with Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, Edge more recently, Safari for all the Mac people out there, and Opera if you're European. Please don't use Internet Explorer. It has become depreciated and no longer gets any sort of security updates. Opera, I no longer trust Opera because it was bought by China, or a Chinese company, and as I previously have talked about, if a company is operating in China, you're not really sure, you can't trust that it's secure. So we're left with Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Safari. Now, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, and Safari, is any one of them heads and shoulders above the rest? Not really. All of them kind of have access to roughly the same plugins for safety and security. I will say that I personally use Firefox the most, mainly because Chrome's getting too big for my liking and I like competition. Edge, I just don't like it, and Safari, I just want a browser that is the same on both Windows and Mac, so I go with Firefox. Now, if you remember a little while ago, we were talking about whenever you get an email and you click on something, that it will take you somewhere and it's not necessarily where you think it is going to take you. And I mentioned hovering. So the good news is my computer screens are sufficiently large that it's probably impossible for anyone but me to see this. But if you look at the very, very bottom left, you can see that whenever I hover over link, the thing that says links that has, the different coloring and the underline, something will pop up on the bottom left of my screen. I don't know if anyone can read it, but if I clicked on this, it would take me to www.don'tclickonthat.com. Now, I will say that the website don'tclickonthat.com is run by a company that basically wants to sell you stuff to tell you, please don't click on that. So it's kind of like a security company, which I found kind of funny for this class. So if you hover over a link, look in the bottom left, it will tell you where the link is going to go. For example, if someone sends you a link and says, hey, this product on Amazon was pretty awesome, and you hover over it and it goes to a website that isn't Amazon, don't click on it. That's kind of the situation we're trying to talk about.
And if you look at the email where it's coming from and it's not coming from Amazon, have you already, I mean, we don't click on it, but you just click on the part that shows where the email is coming from. Does that do the same thing, or, or is that already too late?
It really depends on what is in the email. So oftentimes you'll get an email and it'll say at the very top, click to enable pictures. What essentially is happening is Google, in my example, because I use Google a lot, in Gmail, it'll strip pictures and all that stuff from an email until I say, yes, I want to see it. Because if your computer has loaded and viewed a picture, it has essentially read the picture to memory in order to display it. So if you have an email and you click on it and it opens and there's a picture, your computer has effectively downloaded the picture. If
Right.
someone put a virus in the picture, then you would get it.
So it says it's an email from Home Depot. If I don't click on an email and if I just click on the top line to see it's coming from Home Depot and see that it's not, have I already opened it? If I just check the email address rather than hover over it?
Yeah. So the hovering over the link is more for if the email's already open.
Okay.
But
But
yeah, if you kind of hover over it, you can see where the header is going or coming from.
okay.
And again, email services are very good at catching these things. So don't necessarily like live in fear of clicking on an email that you're supposedly supposed to have gotten. Just be a little modicum of security and safety. All right, so on this page, we have some privacy enhancing browser plugins. Kind of if you walk away from this class and you're like, that was way too much information, I don't think I'm going to do any of that because there was too much, just do this one thing. So actually, no, the one thing would probably be passwords, but do this other thing. So use privacy safe browser extensions. Most of the time, when I fix a computer that has a virus, it has come onto the computer by way of something that one of these privacy safe browser extensions would have blocked. My preferred is uBlock Origin, but there are some other options, which I have listed. I think someone
Mhm.
particularly liked Privacy Badger. I looked into it and it looks good. But if you this uBlock Origin is available on Firefox, Chrome, Edge, and it was available on Safari. I'm not sure if it's back on Safari. But essentially what this does is it blocks ads and more. The bigger thing is whenever I was doing my spiel on how if you're looking at an image, your computer has already downloaded the image. Same thing with ads. If a website has an ad on it and you view it, your computer's already downloaded it. If that ad had a virus installed or a rootkit or whatever, your computer now has that. But these privacy safe browser extensions will stop that from happening. And there's also the good side effect of you don't see YouTube ads anymore.
A very nice thing.
So, uBlock Origin, Privacy Badger, Ghostery, just very simple to install on your browser. And I think we actually even have a class where I went over that I will totally have Mary remember which class that was, where we,
It was, you did it very simple, browser extensions, and
oh
we should
yeah,
do it again.
yeah. But it's very easy to install these. And if someone wants, I can show you how to install them at the very end. And trust me, we are exceedingly close. Section 3, nice to do. So, password manager. This is a application or a service that will remember all of your passwords for you so you don't have to. It will also randomly generate super long passwords that you would have no chance in hell at remembering. The only thing you have to remember is if you have a password manager, you will need to remember one password for the password manager. If you forget that password, you may have, depending on the password manager, you may have a really bad time because then you have lost access to all of your other passwords and would have to reset all of them. Now for password managers, there are 4 different types, kind of. Yeah, kind of. There are the browser-based password managers. So these are the things that, for example, are built into other stuff. So Chrome has one that's built in, Firefox has one that's built in, and Apple has the Apple keychain. I'm not going to go into it in detail, but browser-based are not as good as the other options, but they are better than a pencil and paper. Now, cloud-based, we have Dashlane, LastPass, 1Password, and Bitwarden. Dashlane, I believe, is currently the highest rated. I prefer Bitwarden because it's free. There's a free version. Dashlane, LastPass, and 1Password all have free like trials you can do, but realistically they're paid. And then, so cloud-based ones, these are ones that you would access in the cloud. So you would kind of want to be online in order to access them. Desktop-based ones don't care if you're online or not. So these are ones that are on your computer. And the OG of password managers is KeePass, and it's still my personal favorite one. It's really simple, straightforward, and you know exactly what's going on to it or what it is because everyone has looked at it and said, yes, this is good. Whereas Dashlane, LastPass, 1Password, and Bitwarden, don't necessarily get audited by outside people like KeePass does. So you should be very secure in cloud-based ones, but you are 100% secure with KeePass because no one is accessing that but yourself. It's not stored anywhere but where you put it. And then portable. This is, for example, if you put KeePass on a thumb drive, and then you could carry it around to different computers for you. Here's a little spiel on KeePass. And we're at the question portion, which is perfect because we just got a question. How would I initiate Bitwarden? So if you were going to set up a Bitwarden account, I would Google Bitwarden. The first result, I'm going to make sure and look, hover over it, bitwarden.com, just for the sake of this class. Open it up, create your free account. Click email address, name, master password, and it makes sure that to tell you that the master password is the password you use to access your vault, and please don't forget it. There is no way to recover the password if you forget it. One of the benefits of a service like Bitwarden, which is an online-based one, is once you have an account with it, you can then download Bitwarden onto your computer, and you can also add an extension to your web browser. So in this case, I'm using Brave, so I would click on Brave. And what the extension does is, for example, if you have an Amazon account and you have that in Bitwarden and you go to Amazon, the Bitwarden icon, which is actually right here. Again, I'm not sure if you can tell, but it's in the top right and it's a little shield icon. If I was on Amazon, it would glow blue, and which would basically prompt me to click it. And if I clicked it, it would then sign me into Amazon. So that's kind of how you would initiate it. In the password management class that Mary can send, I do know we go over Bitwarden specifically and like how to start it, how to add passwords and sites to it, and how to use it, and stuff like that.
So Tim, that is more secure than using like Chrome, Google Password Manager?
Yes.
Okay. Good to know.
But the ones that are built into browsers are still better than not using them.
Mm-hmm. Oh, you don't like my Excel spreadsheet?
I think it is a thing of beauty.
So does anyone have any questions for Tim? And are we all going to start working on our passwords and improve them? I know I am. Every time I take this class with Tim, I am determined to do better.
So while feel free to leave if you want, but while people are perhaps gathering the courage to ask a question, I'm just going to go to security.org's How Secure is My Password option. And Mary, can you tell me a random fake password that you think is probably not that good?
PW123.
So it would take a computer about 1 millisecond to crack your password. Now, if I just repeat PW123 three times, it will take it 100,000 years to crack the password. So I'm not saying, take a really simple thing and just repeat it three times, but I'm kind of saying if you're going to use a simple password, just make it longer somehow, and it'll make it a lot harder for something to guess it.
Tim, do you have any advice for if certain sites want extra characters, certain sites won't accept extra characters, or they'll accept certain ones and not others. Is there any, do you have any sort of thoughts about that?
Yeah. So a lot of sites that don't offer the ability for you to have a special character, it's just because it's an older site and they haven't updated it
Okay.
to kind of allow the special characters. But you can make the password just as secure. Like if I delete one of these and make it an exclamation mark,
Wow.
32 million years. If I go back to 100,000 years. So 32 million versus 100,000.
Okay.
That's pretty big. But if I just do this one more time, now we're at 10 trillion. So you can kind of get around the extra security that a non-normal character will give by just adding a little bit more. My computer often asks if I want to remember a password of a site. Should I or not? So it kind of depends. In my opinion, it depends on what kind of site it is. If this is something because you like the New York Times crossword puzzle and you sign into newyorktimes.com, or if this is something because you watched that chess movie on Netflix that went absolutely crazy and you've signed up for a membership of chess.com and you want to know if those passwords should be saved, I'd say save away, go crazy, save those passwords. I would not recommend, and I don't save like banking passwords on my browsers. But other things, I don't really see a problem with because it just makes it a lot easier and quick to sign in. But
Great.
if you have a password manager, again, like Bitwarden, top right, it'll glow blue whenever you need to input a password. You just click on it and you're logged in. So it doesn't really save you that much time if you have a kind of like a more secure password solution anyway. So I realize that probably didn't explicitly answer the question because the answer is both yes and no. But things that involve money, I wouldn't tell it to remember. Is a short way of looking at it.
It's a good rule of thumb.
If I can lose money, don't do it.
Yes.
Got it.
Yes. Does anyone else have any last questions for Tim? So don't forget, he's doing tech drop-in tomorrow from 12 to 1, and you can get the link on our website under the events page. He will not be doing tech drop-in on the next week on the 23rd. So get your questions in tomorrow. And thank you, everyone.
And also, if you have any questions outside of that time frame, please
Mhm.
feel free to email Mary because
Yes.
she likes getting emails. And if she just wants more opinions on the question, she will pass it along and then I'll reply to it as soon as I can.
It makes me feel important. So thank you for sending emails.
You are important, Mary.
Thank you, Tim. Not, but anyway, we appreciate your background and your experience with all of this. I always learn something. I don't always institute it, but I do learn. So thank you very much.
It's half the
Thank
battle.
you. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.